Good morning, and thank you so much for joining us for another episode of Coffee, Candidates, and Conversation. And today we have a very special guest. But before I tell you who she is, I want to make sure everybody understands what this is about. We decided to create this production so that we could give voters access to candidates and in a way that would give them some personal, up close and in your face type of exposure to the different candidates seeking to represent our interests, whether it be in our Tennessee legislature and or if it's for our U.S. Senate or U.S. Congress. And so it's important that we get that information so that we can make informed decisions as voters. And so as many candidates who are running who agree to come on the show and participate, we're going to have so that we can give you that access to make good choices. So today's guest is Miss Robin Kimbrough, and she is running to serve in our United States Senate as one of the two senators for the state of Tennessee. Miss Kimbrough, how are you? Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you for having me here this morning for this opportunity to share with voters. Glad to be here.
Well, look, I have my coffee in my Shelby County Democratic Party coffee mug, and I understand you are consuming a different type of beverage, certainly one that's more healthy.
This is a celery green mix this morning to get me started, and I'm not a coffee drinker. And the last time I had coffee one time in my life. I was 18 years old. And it was December of 1988.
But that reminds me, it looks, I guess the green look kind of reminds me of the last time I took a wheatgrass shot at Whole Foods. I think it was, I took the power shot, which is the wheatgrass, lemon juice, and ginger.
Right.
Kind of mixed together. And I don't know what all it does for you, but it tastes so bad that it feels like it must do a lot of good.
Well, this actually gives you energy. And because of the campaign, I've been so busy, sometimes I forget about eating. And so it's good to have these kind of drinks on hand to kind of push you through to the next moment.
Understood. Well, I'm not sure if I'll be trying any celery juice blend, especially where celery is one of the main ingredients, anytime soon. But I will support you in your endeavor to consume the wonderful, tasty vegetables that are probably going to add so much vitality to. Well, let's go ahead and jump in and give candidates what they've been waiting for, and that is more information about you and who you are. So, first question for the day. We want to know something, well, voters, all of us, we want to know something about you that we, one, cannot Google, two, that we would not learn from your campaign literature or from your website, and three, that we would not ordinarily get to know about you if we work with you in a professional capacity.
Great. I love this question. And I love to thrift shop. I like to go to yard sales, and I like to get bargains. And especially, I like to get bargains. I like to yard sale. I love to thrift shop. And not only to get bargains, but I like fellowshipping with the other people who like to do it. Nice. So it's kind of a really fun event for me when I had time to do it, and before COVID hit. So a lot of those kind of things you couldn't do after, COVID-19 hit. I also enjoy karaoke.
Okay.
I love karaoke, and my favorite karaoke tune is Proud Mary by Tina Turner. So I have, not only do I do the karaoke, but I also have a routine that I do with the karaoke. So I try to do it at least once a year.
Mm-hmm.
And I believe I have already done it this year. My wonderful husband, Arnold Hayes, he and I went to a Patti LaBelle concert and we were there kind of early. So we went over to a karaoke bar and I did Proud Mary, Tina Turner. I love doing it.
Nice.
And I love doing it because the song has so much energy. And I love sharing that energy with the people. And so, even with that, that's what makes me a great candidate for this United States CDC.
Nice.
So, those are the things that I enjoy doing that you would not find otherwise. There is no video out there of me doing Proud Mary.
So can we safely assume then that you could sing? Can you really sing?
Oh no, I'm horrible.
Well, you are not
I'm
alone.
horrible.
Yeah.
I'm horrible.
Cool. Well, let's go a little deeper then. One thing we know about candidates is that when you run for office, or if you're an elected official and you're running for re-election, your life essentially becomes the sum of your constituents' concerns. And it's easy for us to forget as voters and about the fact that candidates and elected officials are still voters. So let's take your candidate's hat off, set that to the side for a moment, and let's talk voter to voter. What issue for you is the single most important or like heavy issue on your mind and heart? What's that issue for you?
Well, I want to talk about healthcare, and I know everybody's talking about it. For a while, I was practicing law on my own, and I had to get health insurance. And I managed to shop out some health insurance, but it did not cover it didn't cover a pre-existing condition. And I was really concerned that if I were to develop cancer in that area, what would I do? And so I was younger then and was hopeful that I didn't have that problem, but still that was a fear for me. Later, I would get married, divorce, and be a single parent. And I worked for a nonprofit, the Tennessee Coalition to End Domestic and Sexual Violence. And I didn't have, I had health insurance, but my two children did not. So I had to shop that out. And that was, it was expensive. And I wasn't eligible for 10 kids. At that time, 10 kids was out, and I wasn't eligible for that. So I paid out-of-pocket healthcare premiums for my two children and almost $300 a month for my son's medication. So I picked up a third job to cover these expenses. And many of, I already call them my constituents or the voters have heard me say that no one should have to work themselves to death to live. And I really believe that. And we have to address healthcare in our state, in our nation. COVID-19, 40 million people lost their jobs and they lost their health insurance. So definitely healthcare touches, it touches on something that's very personal to me. And even in my work with domestic violence victims, many victims stay in lethal situations because they are afraid to lose health care because their batterer controls them with health care. And so we definitely, if we had a robust insurance program that was not connected to employment, we could not only help out people like myself and not covering pre-existing conditions, being afraid of getting sick, and making sure your kids are covered, and making sure you can leave a legal situation. We could improve the health of everyone. So that's an issue to me. And of course, social justice reform is an issue for me, especially concerning criminal justice issues. I have I have I have a black son, and I fear for him. I fear that I'm afraid to let him drive. I'm afraid of what may come of a police interaction with him. Um, every time that every time that I hear, yeah, every time I hear of these police killings like George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, and Rashard Brooks, those create extra anxieties in me as a mother. So we definitely need to work to address these issues. And the other issue for me as a voter is that I want a leader that I can have access to. I think so many times people get into office and they dismiss their constituents, the same ones they were hounding for votes. They forget about them. And for me, it is important in a leader that I can have access to you. I don't have to go through 5 people to talk with you. I want you to be available. And I just want people to know as you go out to vote that I'm going to be that leader, because I know how that feels, not to be heard, to be ignored, because you're not in the inner circle. And we have got to deconstruct that kind of interaction that sometimes these offices create with our constituents. So that's something that I look for in a leader.
Well, what I wanted to do here is to kind of jump into a different issue. And for those of you all who are looking at the background, we just adjusted the positioning so that we can improve the sound quality to try and make sure that you all will be able to hear clearly what was being said. So that's just to explain that piece. But you're talking about healthcare, and I think that's a critical issue too in America. And I want to put up something on the screen, and let's just sort of talk about it through this lens. And that is healthcare access for the middle class versus access for the poor and elderly. And just to add perspective to that, I think obviously the vast majority of healthcare coverage in America, or at least healthcare and also healthcare that's provided, it goes towards the elderly, and then we have 2 different worlds with healthcare access for the poor versus for the middle class. Can you talk about that and what you believe to be a workable remedy?
Great. So I like the word access, because even if you have health insurance, it doesn't mean that healthcare is accessible to you. First, you may live in a community, a rural community, for example, where you don't really have access to healthcare. So just because you have health insurance doesn't mean that you have access. And just because you have health insurance doesn't mean you can afford to use it. So that also creates an access problem. So I would consider myself probably middle class, and I have health insurance, but I have lacked access to health insurance because I know how much it's going to cost for me to go to the doctor. And there are plenty of people who have the same struggle when deciding whether to use their health insurance or not. And so when we think about the poor and elderly, they're meeting the same problem. So the poor may not have insurance at all, and they're totally afraid of getting sick, or they're depending on safety net hospitals to give them care without having the health insurance. The elderly, although they may have Medicare or Medicaid, their cost, their benefit is limited. So it creates an access problem for them as well. And this becomes very clear when we see who COVID-19 killed. It was ineffective elderly people and Black and brown people who have limited access to healthcare, and poor people. So this is why we need a robust program that not only deals with the health insurance piece, but also deals with access. Okay. So we've had over 15 or at least 15 rural hospitals to close here in Tennessee. So that creates an access problem. And this is why we need to expand Medicaid here in Tennessee. We must flip the state legislature so that we can have this funding going to our rural communities especially. And I support Medicare for all, which will improve Medicare for seniors, and it would make sure that everyone has access to health care. So as I've already said before, 40 million people lost their jobs and their health insurance. In fact, I talked to a woman who, before she lost her job to COVID-19, was middle class. And now she survives off her unemployment benefits, which will be reduced because of our national leadership not handling this problem effectively. I asked her about her health insurance. And she said, I cannot even think about health insurance because I'm trying to make sure that I can eat and take care of my living expenses. No one should have to live worrying about dying. And what that means is no one should be trying to think about how to eat versus trying to take care of their health situation. I hope and pray that this woman does not get COVID-19. And I hope and pray that she doesn't get cancer because now her problem will escalate.
Let me ask you another question, a follow-up to that. By healthcare access, are you saying healthcare access, it occurs when you both have insurance and the healthcare becomes affordable to the extent that you have to pay? So is it the balance of having coverage and then having the affordability piece? Is it affordable healthcare coverage or affordable healthcare? You know, like the bill patient responsibility part. And I asked that question just to draw the distinction between what it is that you're saying to give the voters some clarity on that.
Right. So there's one thing to have health insurance. So we talk about having access to health insurance, and we all need health insurance. But even with health insurance, there might be an access problem. Number one, there might be an access problem because even with your health insurance, you cannot afford the deductible. Or you cannot afford the bill after the deductible. Because as we all know, you go in and pay a deductible, and then when the bills start rolling in, it was more than what you may have expected or what was estimated. The other piece of access is you have a doctor or a hospital to go to, period. So health access is an issue. That's an issue. So some people may be experiencing this all around. They don't have their health insurance. They don't have access because they don't have a hospital near them, and they don't have a safety net hospital. So, like in Nashville, for example, our safety net hospital is General Hospital. So people who do not have health care can go to General for services. Because they're set up for that particular population. So their general is important because they close this gap of access for persons who don't have health insurance, and general is located here in the metropolitan area. So what I have found with rural communities, there are folks here that do have health insurance, but they still don't have access because they have to travel an hour to get medical services. So that's how I understand access. Having insurance is a big piece of resolving the issue, but it's not all. It doesn't resolve all of the issues, and this is why the question is here, right? Healthcare access to the middle class versus access to the poor and elderly. Middle class are struggling to pay for their medical bills. I spoke to a woman in Greenville, which is in Tri-Cities. I was at a park. I'm giving a talk to a group of people, and it just so happened there were two other women sitting at a picnic table who were listening to me. And afterwards, she said, "I appreciate you. I'm going to vote for you because right now I've had to file bankruptcy on because of medical bills, almost $11,000 in medical bills." And this woman works. She works hard, and it just so happened that her husband became ill, and the medical bills raked up, and they had to file a Chapter 7 bankruptcy, which meant that they lost everything. They had to give up everything to wipe the slate clean because of medical bills. That is a middle class and poor access issue. I talked to another constituent who was going through the same thing. So we've got to expand Medicaid, and we have got to deal with our broken healthcare system. And COVID-19 has forced us to look at the fact that people are dying because they don't have health insurance. They're getting sick and sicker because they don't have access to health care. And COVID-19 has shown us that as we take care of the health of every individual, we take care of the health of the whole community. Because COVID is contagious. So it's so important that we take care of the health of every individual. The other piece of this is that as we develop a vaccine for COVID-19, we need to make sure that everyone has access to it. When COVID-19 was starting to be addressed by our national leadership, one issue was whether undocumented immigrants could get tested for COVID-19. They had to say yes, right? Because all of us are in this together. We can transmit COVID to one another. That's why it was important that everyone have access to this piece of healthcare. And it's going to be also important that we do it when the vaccine comes out.
Well, let me also, I want to make sure I focus this in because healthcare is a big issue. How do you reconcile this specific piece? The middle class struggles to pay deductibles and medical bills, and poor people struggle to pay insurance premiums. Do you currently see anything that we've done in our legislative enactments that makes sense to improve and perhaps address this specific duality and nuance that we all know is present, where we get that the middle class struggles to pay the deductibles and medical bills, but you have poor people who can't even pay premiums. So
this is great.
Is there a solution that can fix both?
There is a solution that can fix both. It's Medicare for all. Medicare for all would take care of all of these problems that you've listed. And unfortunately, this is not going to be on the table as we move forward in the legislature. But if I were your United States Senator, this is something I would still fight for. We must start from the left, Medicare for all, so that we can expand not to expand, but to make sure that everyone is covered. Because this problem that you have just described is the reason why people are walking around sick, because they they can't afford to pay insurance premiums, or they are afraid of the deductible costs. This is exactly why people are walking around here sick. This is where our problems are connected. There's a fine line between the middle class and the poor, right? COVID-19, 40 million people lost their jobs and lost their health insurance. Now they're poor. There are people that are losing their houses. There are people that are going to be homeless. We're going to see an increased number in bankruptcy. We're going to see increased number of people getting sick and walking around sick because they are afraid about cost. And Medicare for all would resolve this problem. Even if you have employee-based insurance, it's so volatile and fragile given the state of our economy. And I just believe that we as Americans, we need to take care of the people that are here. Because as we take care of individuals, we take care of ourselves. We are all connected. We are all in this together. People should not have to work themselves to death to live.
Well, now I think you made that point very, very wonderfully for us. But let me unfold, some of these issues in a different way. And I've been answering a lot of phone calls for the Shelby County Democratic Party that we've received, and one of those particular calls really impressed upon me the importance of addressing this next issue. And it was a voter who was really concerned about Social Security. And so let's look at this, and it's the security of Social Security. Thoughts?
This is a great question. So I was at the Boyle Library here in Nashville at the polls, and a woman came up to me. She had a mix of anger and fear over Social Security benefits and wanted to know my thoughts about it. And she said none of the candidates who are running have answered her question about this. We've got to get real. People are thinking about Social Security currently and for themselves. The average payment for Social Security was between $13,000 and $14,000 a year. That's about $7.25 an hour minimum wage. Our seniors deserve better than this. We need to repeal Donald Trump's tax cuts. We need to make sure everyone is paying their way through Social Security. This will allow for an increase in Social Security, number one. Number two, we need to get rid of the FICA cap. So someone getting paid $138,000 a year and someone getting paid, let's say $1 billion a year, pays the same amount. We need to get rid of this cap and make sure everyone pays their fair share in Social Security. We also need to make sure that Social Security is not privatized, because there was some movement to privatize Social Security. We need to do better about the people who have spent their years working and taking care of us. We need to do better about taking care of them when they become eligible for Social Security. I also support funding for the Older Americans Act. The Older Americans Act is a fund that provides wraparound services for seniors. For example, nutrition programs. We need to make sure that we as Americans take care of our seniors. Why? COVID-19 showed us it was seniors who were mostly affected by COVID-19. They were not tested in nursing homes, and as a result, many of them died. And many of their conditions that they had in the nursing home became worse because of the care that they received. And we also need to expand Medicaid, which would help with the health care of seniors.
Wow, I think that's very useful information. Voters, I hope you were taking note of that. And just to make sure you got it, voters, she said that people who make $138,000 a year pay the same amount of in their FICA deduction as a person who makes $1 billion a year. Take note of that. That's a very important information to remember. What we want to do right now is just take a very, very brief pause for the cause, and we'll share some information with you all that's critical information. So stay tuned, and we will be right back. discussions, which is the lightning round, which is where I'll pick a topic and I'll post it on the screen at the bottom. And then what we'll do is we'll talk about that, and we want to try to keep the responses to about a minute and a half. We'll go through a few of these questions, and then we'll wrap up at the end with our really big question that we ask all the candidates who come on the show. And so, are you ready for the lightning round?
I hope so.
All righty. And so we're going to start with this big question, which is, what is a livable wage?
Wow. So I definitely support a living wage of at least $15 per hour. No one can live off $7.25. And I believe a living wage will boost our economy. The more money people are paid, the happier they are on their jobs, and the more productivity you will get. And as a result, they're going to reinvest in the economy. And when they reinvest in the economy, people will need more goods. So I definitely support a living wage of at least $15 per hour.
All righty. Next question. Let's talk about economic growth in Tennessee.
Right. So oftentimes when we talk about economic growth, businesses to the state, especially in rural areas of Tennessee, we need to create jobs. A recent report, in addition to that, produced by researchers from the University of Tennessee in Knoxville, which was submitted to Governor Lee, stated that to boost Tennessee's economy, that we need to take care of the health of Tennesseans. So again, I know that we spend a lot of time talking about healthcare, but we cannot improve our economy until we improve the health of the people who live here in Tennessee.
Okay. All right. Let's talk about this next issue, which I think is a really big issue: restoration of voting rights for ex-felons.
I agree that ex-felons or persons who have completed all of their sentencing and time should have their voting rights restored, period. And I do not, I would also state that even though there are expungement processes for ex-felons to regain their voting rights, I believe those laws are complicated and create even more voter suppression. So I agree with the restoration of voting rights for ex-felons.
Let's put a twist on it. Should felons have their voting rights taken in the first place?
This is a really good question. You really putting us on the hot seat here, but this is a really good question. So the progressive view is that felons should not lose their voting rights, as it is that voting has to deal with the fact that the person's a citizen. I would definitely be open to talking about making sure that no one loses their voting rights as a result of being incarcerated. The argument against this is that this creates bias, and there are other power and control issues because this is a vulnerable population. But I am definitely open to this.
Okay, let's go ahead and talk about, the world is changing, and it's changing rapidly. So we're going to talk about cracking down on cybercrime.
Great. I'm glad I got this question because this is an issue that relates to domestic violence and sexual assault. So many times batterers use cyber, and especially in trafficking kind of situations. Cybercrime is used to further exploit these victims. So absolutely, we need to strengthen regulations in these areas, and we need to strengthen ways that cyber crimes can be reported, specifically to protect domestic violence victims and victims of sexual assault and trafficking.
Okay. Well, in line with that, and I have about I think 3 more lightning round questions for you before we get to our big question for the day. How about this? The right to bear arms versus the need for gun control. How do we reconcile the two?
I want to say that I believe in the Second Amendment, that everyone should have a right to bear arms. But I think part of that, well, not even a but. I believe that everyone should have the right to bear arms. I believe I'm a Moms Demand Action gun sense candidate. I do believe there needs to be regulations. I believe there need to be universal background checks. I do support that we should ban the sale of automatic assault rifles, especially as we look at incidences like Sandy Hook. Also, I worked on legislation here in Tennessee to make sure that a person under order of protection and a person who has been convicted of domestic assault can never possess a firearm. Tennessee is ranked number 4 in women who are murdered by their intimate partners. So yes, I believe in the right to bear arms, but also we have to balance that against, in the case of domestic violence victim safety, and we also have to balance it against community safety. And so that's why I support universal background checks, ban of sale of automatic assault rifles, and I do support closing the dating relationship loop in the Violence Against Women's Act.
Okay. How about this next one? Military spending. How much is enough?
So Donald Trump's most recent budget on military spending, I believe, was over 736 billion or 738 billion. And in a press conference, he said that's billion with a B. Although some of this money, a small portion of it went to increase military salaries. We need that money to increase military salaries. But most of it went to build more nuclear weapons. We do not need to put all of this money into building nuclear weapons. This money could be used to support Medicare for all. It could be used to support nutrition programs, educational programs, and other programs in communities that would actually help us to progress as a society. The monies that are spent on more and more nuclear arms is not even a good foreign policy move. So that's how I feel about military spending.
Okay. And I know I said I had 3 more questions, but I actually have this won't be the final one. There'll be 2 more. And so I'm going to first ask this one. I think it's important. We can't let it go by without being addressed. This threat has been presented by Betsy DeVos and Donald Trump, and it's the threat of decreasing federal funding for school districts that go all virtual. What are your thoughts on that?
I absolutely disagree with this. In fact, because of remote learning, this calls for even more funding to go into our schools. I talked to a group of folks from Memphis, educators from Memphis, and in Nashville, and in rural communities. These children are going to have to face learning with laptops and iPads at home. Many of them do not have these resources. Mm-hmm. And the school systems are short on resources to provide for these students. They need more money. We're going to need more money for wraparound services for students. We have children that are in very difficult home environments, and they're still going to need therapeutic services and counseling interventions to help them to be successful as students. We're still going to need nutrition programs. Many students only get to eat because of the school lunch. Our students can't learn on an empty stomach. And we still, in my opinion, need substitute teachers. I could see their roles being different, and even different in the sense that they would not be substituting for a teacher necessarily in the classroom, but definitely support for students at home. And we need to increase broadband so rural communities can have access to the internet. So this is awful. This is why we've got to change our national leadership. We've got to take care of our children. It's the children in private schools. They might have the resources and already ready to roll out these remote programs. But we have got to take care of our children. We've got to take care of the least of these. And so that's important to me. If it had not been from school at the elementary level, my teachers, and having the resources that I needed in school, I would not be here asking for your vote to be your United States Senator. It was Miss McIntosh who said to me, "You have potential." She changed my life. I looked the word up. I didn't know what it meant. I was in the 4th grade. And it meant I could be anything I wanted to be. Teachers are important. We got to increase their salaries. They're going to need more training. They're going to need more resources. So contrary to that, we need to increase funding.
All right. Well, we've got one more lightning round question for you, and then we'll go to our big question. So, social justice, civil rights, and race relations in America. What do you think the next big step in making progress on this battleground is for America?
Of course, we need to stop the killing of Black people in the course of policing. But the way we do that is that we must pass the George Floyd Justice in Policing Act. If I were your United States Senator today, I would be standing with Kamala Harris and Cory Booker to pass this act, and definitely not with Tim Scott. Let me just briefly tell you what this act does. It gets rid of the qualified immunity doctrine. And until we get into the pockets of law enforcement, we're not going to see movement on this issue. I know this is a lightning round, so I don't have a lot of time to answer the question. The other piece is it requires implicit and exclusive bias training, and it also creates a police registry, gets rid of no-knock warrants and chokeholds. If I were part of the writing of this legislation, I would expand it to make sure community oversight boards were funded across the nation. Memphis has a community oversight board, Nashville does, and Knoxville have community oversight boards. We need to fund these types of boards all across the nation to increase accountability and transparency. I do agree with funding community policing organizations, intervention organizations, like here in Nashville, getting into Army. I also would add this other provision. I would say that if you don't comply with the Justice and Policing Act, you're going to lose your burning cops money. We already do this when policing is bad with sexual assault victims. We need to do the same when policing is bad with handling situations like George Floyd and Rashard Brooks and Breonna Taylor. So, and also we need to put reparations on the table. I would support HR 40. We need to pass a comprehensive reparations package, which includes reconciliatory language addressing slavery in our community. This is why we're seeing issues regarding statutes and bus, because we have not truly dealt with this issue. And I believe reparations, HR 40, with some revisions, is the way that we can address civil rights and race relations. And we need to pass, and I'm going to go ahead and name it, the John Lewis Voting Rights Act. We have got to put back provisions in the Voting Rights Act of 1965 to end voter suppression.
All right. You have heard it from the lady herself, Miss Robin Kimbrough. And so here's our big question. And it's one that we ask every candidate who comes on the show. And so let's do a SWOT analysis with you putting on your head as a legislator who is a state U.S. Senator for the state of Tennessee. Tell us from Tennessee what you see as our greatest strength, as our greatest weakness, where do you see our biggest opportunity, and what do you see as the single most important threat that we must address so that we can move from where we are today to where we can be tomorrow?
Our strength is our democracy. Our strength is the people here in these United States. We are our strength because we are that one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We are our greatest strength. We are in this together. And if we work through our issues together, I know that we can move the needle on the problems in our society. This means that we're going to have hard conversations with people that don't necessarily agree with us. And it's our democracy that allows us to do that. It's our democracy that allows us to have these hard conversations, to vote, to speak out, and to stand up for what we believe in. That's our greatest strength is exhibited and John Lewis being able to start good trouble. That is our democracy. Our weakness is that we don't use our strength. We get so caught up into divisiveness and hate, and it's weakening us as a nation. And as your United States Senator, every day I'm going to work to speak against hate. So I think that's our greatest weakness. So with that said, I say it's an opportunity. I saw somewhere that said that problems are possibilities. And so even in the midst of our greatest weakness, our hate, there is this thing called hope. And that is going to give us the opportunity to address COVID-19, to address healthcare, to address racism, and to address divisiveness in our community. Our democracy creates an opportunity for change. George Floyd died a horrible death. This man was lynched. It shakes at the very core to watch this man die in the manner that he did. But through that act of hate, it has turned into opportunities and conversations around race that we've never had. And this is what John Lewis left in our charge. He talked about this very issue. He said it's our turn to carry the mantle now and to make change. The threats are those things that make us believe that we cannot get it done. That is our biggest threat. So I asked a woman, I was at Kroger parking lot passing out push cards because I want to be a United States Senator, because I love people and it gives me a chance to talk to you. I asked this woman, I said, hey, I'm running for United States Senate. My name is Robin Kimbrough. She said, I don't vote. You know why she doesn't vote? Because she's lost faith in our democracy. And I told her, I said, vote for me. Because I'm going to renew your hope in democracy. So our greatest threat is the fact that people have lost hope. But yet, in the midst of it, there is a voice that still speaks hope, and that is our opportunity.
All righty. Well, I think that's a wonderful, wonderful breakdown of what's happening in America and Tennessee. And we are so excited to have you on the show. Voters, I hope that you were able to glean a lot from this session and that you were able to take some information that will help make your decision a little easier when you get ready to go to the polls. We're going to be running this series for, again, as many candidates who can appear on the show for as many of the races that are where we have challengers as possible. So before we wrap up for this episode, there are a couple things that I would like to share just really briefly. And first, voters, everyone can make a difference, and one vote can be the difference. So make sure that you are taking an opportunity to be the difference in our communities, in our state, and in our country. Your vote has power, and while one vote is a great flex of power, 100 votes it becomes a superpower. 1,000 votes becomes you know like an invincible weapon, but the power of 10,000 votes is just like an asteroid, unstoppable, with the capability of destroying a planet, with the capability of really changing our country and the world. So now's the time, and now is always the time to make sure you're voting and that your friends are voting and that your family is voting. So be sure to get out and do that. And with that being said, if you want to get more information about Ms. Robin Kimbrough, you can go to her website at www.robinforsenate.com and learn more about her campaign. And you can also access her Twitter, Facebook, and other social media outlets through her website, just clicking on the icon. So check her webpage out and stay tuned for more of these sessions where we highlight candidates running in this race so you can get a good balanced assessment of the field and make an informed decision. So we'll allow you to close us out. We have about a minute and 30 seconds left. So Miss Robin Kimbrough, talk to the voters and tell them why you deserve their support and their vote.
Hello. August 6th is the day we vote for the people we want to serve in the capacities. And I'm asking you for your vote. I'm going to let you know that this is maybe a hard decision for you, but I want you to use your right to vote for me because I care about people. I want to change the culture of our nation. I want to take back our democracy, take back our rule of law, and give power to the people. Vote for me. If you're like me, in the words of Fannie Lou Hamer, you're sick and tired of being sick and tired. I have passion for Tennessee. My son said to a group of voters yesterday, a vote for my mama is a vote for yourself. That's because I am here to serve the people. I may be outspent, but I will not be outworked. This is why I will defeat the Republican in November. And this is why I'm going to change the culture of our nation with your help. Passion for Tennessee.
All righty. Well, you heard it from Miss Robin Kimbrough. And again, she is running to represent Tennessee in the United States Senate. So be sure to check her out at www.robinforsenate.com. If you wrote the website address down earlier, I had a typo in it. And so I've corrected the typo, and the correct web address is on the screen at the bottom. www.robinforsenate.com. Check her out. And thank you so much for tuning in to this episode of Coffee, Candidates, and Conversation.
Here's to you.